Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday webinar. Thank you so much for your patience and flexibility as we moved it to 1 week. Gray and I were just talking about all the deliverables and that were due last week and a few client challenges, and we've all had to do that and make concessions. So we so appreciate his flexibility to continue to be our webinar speaker for this Wednesday. Still a Wednesday, just change the date. So we appreciate that. As you're populating into the chat room here, please tell me where you're coming from. Gray is actually in sunny Florida, but it is chilly in Florida today, and we're not going to have too much sympathy for him, though. And those of us in Georgia or Atlanta, and certainly in the northern part of the country of the Southeast, as it got slammed by ice. So we appreciate the sun being out today and hopefully melting the ice. But I've heard that there's a possibility that we're going to be getting more weather in the metro Atlanta area this Saturday. So we'll see. But we have a Roswell. Hi, Wayne. Hi, Scarlett. So glad to see. Yes, Alpharetta is chilly today. I am in Alpharetta, so as well. So it is chilly. Well, thank you so much for everyone for being here with us. So that being said, like I said, thank you for spending your hour with us today for our Wednesday webinar series. My name is Alice Fox, and I'm the Director of Talent Delivery at Talent Connections. A few housekeeping items before we get started today. This is a 1 hour recorded webinar. We do put all of our webinars on our YouTube channel. So if you miss one or want to go back and hear about it, you can definitely go back onto our YouTube channel and see that. If you have any technical questions during this, please email me at alicefox@talentconnections.net. Participants will be muted. However, we do have the chat feature, as you can see, that you can submit questions. We also have the question and answer feature if you would rather do it anonymous. But this will be a very interactive session. And Ray is very much of a person who likes to have interaction and questions. So we will have a question and answer time at the end as well, though. This webinar is approved for 1 SHRM professional development credit, and that activity code will be given at the conclusion of the webinar. Today, I am pleased to present Gray McDowell. He is a consulting manager in Capgemini's Invents Workforce and Organization Program and Change Acceleration Practice, where he specializes in enterprise transformation, human resources strategy, organization design, and large-scale change execution. Gray has served as a strategic advisor to Fortune 500 companies across technology, manufacturing, financial services, retail, and professional services. His thought leadership spans workforce planning, leadership development, human capital strategy, AI readiness, and organizational behavior. He is an active board member of ACMP Florida and ATD Northeast Florida, and a frequent speaker on transformation, change capability, and leadership evolution for SHRM Florida and SHRM Jacksonville. Gray holds a master's degree in human resource management from Penn State and a bachelor's degree from the College of Charleston. His work blends pragmatic strategy, human-centered design, and change management science to help leaders build organizations that are resilient, adaptable, and future-ready. We are ready to hear this, and we're so excited to have you here again with us, Gray. And here we're ready for you to start and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I welcome everybody. I know we're not going to be able to interact face to face on this webinar today, but look forward to interacting with you in the chat function. Elise gave me a great welcome, so I don't need to toot my own horn again. Just wanted everyone to know, if you like what you hear, if you have any questions, feel free to add me as a LinkedIn connection. I'm on Medium as well as Substack, trying to get that going. And I just produced my first book. It was published a few weeks ago. So if you're interested, take a peek. Very much interested to know your thoughts on the subject. And at least, did you want to go through any of this stuff, or you want me to just progress?
Yep, I will go over that at the end. So if you want to go ahead and we'll circle back to that at the end then. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yep.
All right. So, what we're going to talk about today, five very broad but hopefully compelling topics. We want to understand what agile workforce strategy looks like. I think that's why we're all here. And some of the key ingredients to this recipe, the talent levers, applying planning techniques for effective agile workforce strategy, organizational readiness. Again, with my change management hat on, got to give a shout out to assessing and analyzing the readiness of the organization for any major transformation. And then we're also going to review a roadmap that I'm going to provide you with. So we're going to go over some conceptual items. We're going to have some thought exercises, but I'm also going to provide you all with a roadmap on how you can implement some of these techniques, all or some. And then there are some great tools embedded that you can leverage to workshop with your team, your broader HR, organizational development team, or even the organization if you're in a position where you can actually, and there's the expectation that you're going to partner with senior leaders. Again, you'll notice a theme throughout that really the best way to implement agile workforce planning and strategy is with the business, not to the business. All right. So, kind of the way I want to set the stage here is comparing how most of us have or continue to see workforce planning and how we probably should going forward. The way I came up in corporate HR and organizational development, what I see in my role as an external third-party consultant is a lot of what we call the traditional workforce planning model, where best case scenario, the HR function, the talent function is making significant plans to how the workforce is going to um, be staffed, be modeled on an annual basis in lockstep with the broader business goals, strategy, et cetera. That's kind of best case scenario. And again, most organizations don't even hit that mark. But what we really want to do and what we want to move into as quickly as possible, right, is more of an agile strategy where at the very least, we're making not structural changes to how we manage our talent, our workforce, but we're making recognizable pivots given the changing nature of external as well as internal factors. So it's really the difference between, for some of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, the printable, those MapQuest directions, or even an old school map versus GPS course correcting you in real time based on traffic, accidents, what have you. That's really what I want you to think about as we progress through the next few slides. So let's use the chat function. I want you to think, and again, don't be shy. I hope this is a safe space for most of you out there, but what's changing faster in your organization right now? It could be one, it could be a couple. That's my co-pilot Pippi, by the way, or it can be all three. And for most of you, it might very well be all three. So the market. So these are your external factors. So your customer needs or your patient needs, competitor pressure, shifts in revenue, internal expectations, right? Your leadership priorities, urgency of different competing priorities from programs or projects in flight. Our technology, that's a big one these days, has been for the last couple of decades and will most likely be a driving force going forward. So AI, especially in the professional and the service sectors, automation is obviously prominent in manufacturing, logistics, or all the above. So go ahead and put in chat what you think really, yeah, internal expectations. There you go. Yeah. So are you feeling the pressure mostly from internal challenges or opportunities are from those external factors.
My
All right.
favorite is all of the above. I haven't finished
Yeah.
my coffee yet, but yeah, that's my favorite one. But I do really think probably it is going to be all of the above, and I would love for our crowd to chime in here.
hmm
And yes, so Scarlett says yes, it constant internal expectations and leadership changes. And Wayne says technology, AI, and market customer needs. So.
hmm And for those of you that are already think, well, wait a second, I thought I was showing up to an HR webinar. This is for SHRM credits. This seems to be veering close to corporate strategy, operating modeling. You're going to find that, yes, you're absolutely right. And we really have got to move into that area of business partnership at a strategic level. We've been saying business partner back to my early days as a SHRM member when I was starting out, but we still haven't systemically made that advancement as a practice, as a profession. So again, you're definitely going to see a lot of those alignments being called out. Okay. So we're going to talk about agility. What I really want to make sure that everybody understands is that when we talk about agility, there are a lot of ways to define the concept, especially as it relates to leadership and management. But what I find to be a great way to distinguish what is and what is not agility is understanding that it's not necessarily an issue of speed, right? It's not working faster. It's not doing more with less, although at times it feels like we have no choice but to acquiesce to the powers that be within our organization to accomplish more with um, less resources, less funds, a tighter timeline, a constant firefight, putting out fires, always feeling like you're on your back foot, on your heels, having to react rather than proactively plan or even able to see your plan to fruition, right? And then a one-time reorganization. I can't tell you how many times I've been through a reorganization or I've been part of a project, a client engagement where they thought a reorganization was going to fix everything. It rarely, if ever, does. It's a ingredient. It's often a factor in an overall transformation. But yeah, just moving around the boxes in an org chart really does not reset the system and enable success. But what agility is structured adaptability. And I know that may sound like an oxymoron, and we'll get into it a little bit more, but that's really the secret sauce to agile workforce planning is you have a structure, you have a plan, but you build in pivot points, knowing that nothing ever stays the same. Plans never, not face crisis or risk or resistance. So you have to build in mitigations just like you were managing a project, right? Making decisions faster, iterating talent plans, right? Nothing really should be set in stone. You should always be iterating whatever plan or approach or strategy that you're putting forth, recognizing that there needs to be some flex, there needs to be some bend, because again, things change and you don't want to be caught flat-footed. And most importantly, and this will be a theme that's carried throughout the rest of the presentation, is agility is a leadership behavior. One of the most critical leadership competencies over the last few years going into the future is going to be agility. I know for the longest time we really focused our effort on emotional intelligence, on authenticity, on cultural intelligence if you're a global organization. But one of the key themes that we see, that I see in my work, is agility as one of the key leadership competencies, not just for the people at the top in the C-suite, but all the way down to your high performers and your first level people managers. So imagine agility as a pie, and let's breaking it into three pieces. And you can also think of this as a stool, a three-legged stool, where if one of these pieces, if one of these legs is missing, the whole thing kind of tumbles. So we're going to break agility down into these three pie slices or these three legs: strategic, talent, and cultural agility. So let's start with strategic agility. So it's the ability to shift priorities quickly based on new information. Again, let's say best case scenario, you have received the annual strategy, the annual plan from on high, and now it's your department, it's your function's turn to outline, okay, how is our plan going to look for the next year, aligned with leadership priorities, aligned with our sister or our brother functions and departments, so we're all aligned. What does that look like? And again, it's great to have a plan, but that plan really should be allowed to breathe and be allowed to flex as things change quarter by quarter, even month by month. Now, some of those key behaviors aligned to your strategic agility is going to be rapid decision making, clear alignment on top priorities. Everybody within your team and your internal customers, the people that you support, whether you're HR, OD, learning and development, change management, project management, you need to make sure that what you and your team are focused on delivering is aligned with your customers, right? With your business partners. Your priorities is their priorities. You can't be focusing on A, B, and C when they're expecting you to focus on D, E, and F. That's critical. And then the ability to stop doing low value work, right? AI is a great tool, full stop. It's a tool to increase your productivity and therefore your overall performance. So we have to be smart about using the tools that we have, but they're not a replacement for good people doing meaningful work. The next area is talent agility. Okay. This is the ability to deploy skills dynamically, not statically. We're going to talk about job descriptions in a moment. Most of us, again, best practice for many years, we update job descriptions every year. Those job descriptions, in turn, update our performance management metrics. They update our pay bands for salary and benefits, for total compensation or total rewards. They update our job posts, the way we market, we recruit. Okay, that was best practice. That's kind of obsolete now, right? We know that the skills are evolving quicker than we're able to put down what a job looks like that we need on paper. So we need to kind of get away from staffing based on a role, a defined role, and looking for skills. And the more transferable those skills are, the healthier our organization is going to be. And the happier, the more engaged, and the more productive our people are going to be. Because if they feel like, okay, this role I've outgrown, if we can provide them with more work, if we can move them into a lateral position, if we can find them a home in our organization, whether it's our department or whether it's another function, the happier, the more fulfilled they're going to be, and the likelier they are going to stay. And that's the name of the game right now, is good talent retention in this really crazy job market. So it's all about skill-based staffing, not staffing based on a role, and role fluidity. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And that third and final piece of the agility pie is your cultural agility. And this is the toughest one. This is the hardest one to progress or to perfect, right? This is your willingness to adapt the behavior, norms, the culture, the ways of working, okay? Psychological safety, a learning mindset. We're in the L&D and the HR world, we are long familiar with this terminology, these terms. But again, they really haven't been fully adopted. We think they are, right? We're accustomed to them, but they really haven't latched on and become just a normal standard operating procedure in most organizations. So that's what we mean when we talk about agility. Now, the evidence. We're not going to necessarily go through each and every one of these boxes and talk about the data. I always encourage people to check my numbers, do your own research. Again, you're going to want to ensure that you have credible data at the ready anytime you go into a boardroom or a conference room and try to convince your business partners to make a change or express why you think we need to do things differently, right? Always make sure that you're sharing good data with any insight and recommendation that you propose. But just some of the heavy hitters, some of the things that I found that I go back and refer to when I have conversations with my client counterparts is agility matters because of capability and performance. Now, more than any time I can remember as a professional in this space, we need to make sure that we are developing the talent we have because outside external talent, that is few and far between. It's becoming harder and harder to find people that meet the needs that we have and are willing to leave. Okay. Most people are scared to leave a good job, not a great job, and a good salary on the risk of joining a new organization that, again, the grass may seem greener, but that risk in the back of their mind that last hired, first fired, you're going to have to pay a premium to get really good people. So that's something we really need to focus on developing the talent. And it's not just upskilling and reskilling, but we have to make sure our performance management systems are indicative of not only the cultures in our organizations, but what our people expect and really what is the norm within our industry or within their profession. Leadership and decision speed, right? We cannot take our foot off the gas in terms of leadership development at all levels of the organization, those high potentials, as well as our managers and our senior leaders. Employee experience. This kind of ties back into capability and performance. We have to make sure we are assessing our stakeholder sentiment. We are making sure we are doing pulse checks to ensure that what people want, what people expect from their work, from their job, we are meeting it to the best of our ability. Now, there are lines in the sand, right? There are things we can't do or we won't do as an organization, but we need to be willing to go that extra mile and do whatever we can to keep good people productive and engaged within our organization because it's going to be much costlier if we um, if we count pennies, if we shortchange, if we're very short-term focused and not investing in our people. Our people are an investment. They're not an expense, right? So it's that mindset shift. And then market volatility, right? This is mostly the external stuff. What's going on with the economy? What's going on with the greater job market? There's so much, I don't want to bum everyone out. Feel free to turn on the news or YouTube if you if you want to go down that road. I get enough of it in my own free time, so I'm going to save everybody that hassle. But you know where I'm going with all of this, so we want to make sure that we're responding in kind to those external factors. So agility, again, it is a profitable strategy. We're not asking the organization to waste money, to spend money recklessly. We tie it into return on investment. Talent, workforce agility is a return on investment. So I'm sure most of you have at some point or another read or heard about this analogy, this blockbuster Netflix. You know the story, right? Most of you know the story that in an alternate reality, Blockbuster would have said yes to the dress when Netflix came calling back in the early aughts for Blockbuster to buy Netflix, but they were so stuck in their ways, the executives at Blockbuster, they just never thought we were ever going to live in a reality where people didn't go to the video store on a Friday. And we know how that ended. That's another great analogy between the printed MapQuest instructions or the map versus GPS. is you don't want to be a blockbuster. Many organizations are blockbusters when it comes to their talent strategy. They don't want to be, but they don't know any better. They don't know that there is a Netflix out there, that there is a Netflix approach to doing talent, and they're suffering from it. Okay. Moving on to the four talent levers of workforce agility. So we're trying to keep this as simple as possible because, again, you're going to get a copy of this presentation, but I want a lot of these concepts to really resonate so that they embed themselves into your psyche and you can implement some, if not all, as soon as you feel comfortable and confident to do so. So when we think about the different types of agility, that pie chart, well, how do we actually accomplish this? Well, like with anything in life, you need leverage. To get somebody or something to move, to bend, to act, you need to pull some levers. So these are the four levers I've come up with that I think work really well in adopting an agile workforce strategy. So the first one is talent architecture. So that sounds just like I think that is what it sounds like, right? It's the infrastructure of our HR and our talent operating model. It's our performance management system, our learning management system, how we hire, how we promote, how we terminate. Is that adjusted to our culture? Is that adjusted to our strategy and our business plan? Is it aligned with the job market? Basically, are we staying in a competitive footing within our industry or sector? And are we responding in a way that our employees are expecting from us, right? An employee that's working at a Walmart service center, at a retail center, has a different expectation on ways of working than somebody that sells insurance in a corporate setting, right? It's a very different. Now, there are some similar non-negotiables. We all can remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but we need to make sure we're prescriptive and that we're up to date. Talent mobility and liquidity is another one, right? How quickly can people move within the organization up the ladder and making lateral movements? I think we all have familiarity in a talent environment or an ecosystem where, for some reason or another, it's constrained by arbitrary rules and policies and procedures. We want to get away from that as much as possible. Policies and procedures, believe me, have their place, but we want to make sure they're value add and they're not just there, they're not just decor. For the sake of legacy, right? Because somebody put in a lot of effort to put them in. We convinced the rest of the organization this stuff is important, so we've got to adhere to these rules and norms. If it's not working, it's not working, and we need to implement something better. None of this is going to happen without leadership alignment. From the very top down, culture, right, is a top down concept. It doesn't matter what we do as HR, OD, L&D. It doesn't matter how hard we work to implement a really good onboarding program, a leadership development program, succession planning program. If the top leaders aren't bought in, and if it doesn't really represent their values, not just the organizational values that are printed on posters and on a website, but really what they believe in, how they act, then this is always going to be an uphill battle. It's going to feel like you're constantly reinventing the process every year or five. And then finally, operating model flexibility. You have an operating model as part of the HR function, OD, L&D, but then you also are supporting the big, broader organization. Its operating models, whether finance and accounting, marketing, supply chain, you name it, everything has to work in symbiosis. So it's making sure that the org deploys resources at speed, right? We provide them with the ability to add talent or repurpose talent based on their needs. Let's dig into this a little deeper. We'll start with the first lever, talent architecture. Again, from jobs or roles or job descriptions to skills, right? Think transferable skills. So job descriptions are frozen in time. I've worked in organizations where in my entire time with that firm, we never updated those job descriptions. They were never referenced in performance improvement plans, performance management appraisals, um, job postings. They were just there. Most employees had never seen the job description for their role. Like, that's got to stop, right? If we're going to have job descriptions, then they need to be updated and they need to be adopted in all critical areas. These roles, the roles that I'm sure you are in, the roles that you are supporting right now are aging extremely fast. They're changing, so we need to change with them. And a lot of these skills become hidden in rigid titles, right? We focus more on the job title, the job description, than the actual capabilities and skills of the people we have. And thus, if we're not putting at the forefront the right skills for the right person in the right role, you're going to have mismatch, you're going to have calcification. Things aren't going to get done. You're going to throw more bodies, more roles in a particular department, thinking you need more people to get the job done. You're going to have unrealistic expectations for the people that are in those roles. People are going to be unhappy, burnt out, disengaged, and all the while, you're not seeing improvement of performance and productivity. So this is why this particular lever is so important. Now, for a long time, I think we've treated a capability matrix or a capability model as really the best practice in terms of identifying skill sets, whether they're technical job skills, soft skills, leadership competencies, and really sold that to the organization as the optimal way to identify what skills are needed for each role, what roles are needed for each department or function, and then manage our talent accordingly. And I think those days are kind of coming to an end. Not a hard stop, but quite an evolution where the old ways of working just don't work anymore. So think of it more of a taxonomy. Think of it more as a collection of skills that are transferable. So if you think of your org chart and you look at the entire org chart, not just of a particular team, department, or business unit, and you replace the titles and the roles with a group of skill sets, you'll start to see the same skills pop up in multiple areas. And I think that's where we want to shift the paradigm, where we see the opportunity to ensure we're positioning the right skills in the right roles, a bundle of those skills in a right department or function, and then where we can move pieces around the organization when we have a shortage or if we need to reprioritize, if we need to move some skills into another area to meet demands internally and or externally. I think that's going to really make things a lot easier for you within your role, hiring, developing talent, but it's also going to be a easier sell for leadership to really understand that this is how we can all be successful delivering talent mobility. I hope that makes sense. We'll move on to the next one. And again, if you have any questions as we go through, please feel free to drop it in the chat. The next lever is talent mobility and liquidity. So we talked a little bit about this in the last lever, but it's all about getting the right skills to the right work. Okay. It matters because internal mobility is one of the strongest predictors of retention. Um, the old adage is people don't leave organizations or companies, they leave their bosses, they leave people. That's true, but they also leave when they feel like they're not bringing their whole selves to the job, that they're bored or they're burnt out. it's a bad fit or they're not in flow. You've probably heard that term before. So it's making sure that we set people up for success by matching skill to the job at hand and realizing that those jobs evolve, thus the skills have to evolve as well. High mobility organization. So best practice regarding talent mobility and liquidity typically occurs when we start treating most of the work as project-based work and we leverage cross-functional assignments. Now, for some roles, there's just really no way you can sell or design a particular job as project-based work, right? On face value, if you're on a manufacturing line, if you're building cars or if you're building appliances, it may seem like, okay, it's hard for me to wrap my head around the concept of being part of a project. But if you take a step back and think of it in design thinking, with a design thinking mindset, I think you'll find that actually, yeah, you can make the sell. You can make the case that it's all project based. It may be more short term than others, but there's a way to systematically design the way we think about work as short, medium, and long term projects. And once I think that we wrap our heads around those concepts, then this type of a lever is really achievable and leverageable, for lack of a lack of a better term. Um, I read an article recently that people are moving away from the idea of upward mobility, of career pathways, and instead are having more deference for career portfolios. I mean, that kind of makes sense. And I don't think you can have a career, you don't necessarily have to have a career pathway or a career portfolio. I think they can coexist. And the key to that, the key to making both of those drivers a reality is to establish career mobility within your organization, develop structured career pathways that are adaptable, that aren't one size fits all, that have, again, some breathing room. Not only are you revisiting the way that these pathways are structured quarterly, annually, but you're also making sure that there are backdoor ways for somebody to move within that ecosystem, right? You don't have to necessarily set up arbitrary boundaries or borders so that an individual can't transition into a new role that they might have interest in or even some cross-functional skills for whatever reason, because they don't have a particular qualification, they don't have a degree, they don't have so much work experience. There are creative ways to work around that to provide more opportunity, and that really is the secret sauce. I think people want the opportunity, at least what I've seen, to move up and laterally within an organization, identifying skills that they have a natural talent or propensity for, and have the belief, the understanding that the organization is there to support them in achieving these new skill competencies, whether it's through internal training and development, it's external professional development, that as long as there's a way for people to learn the skills that they want, that they need, and the organization is willing to do their part in helping those individuals achieve their goals, I think you're going to have a lot of really happy people that are willing to go to bat for you, especially when times are tough. The next lever is leadership alignment and cultural permissioning. So permissioning is, I don't know if it's a real word or not. Maybe it's a gray word, but I like it, so I'm going to use it. This is all about culture. This is all about actions over words, right? People respond to good leadership that's acted out. They don't care about your leadership development program or your mission, your vision, your commitment. All that stuff is great, but they know if it's being practiced or not. They know if you have good leaders, and that's what they're going to ultimately measure how viable your organization is to stay and to build a career if they have good leaders, not if you have put together a kick butt leadership development program. I've done this myself. I've killed myself building really good leadership development programs at other organizations only to go on Glassdoor. And one of the biggest complaints that people have is our managers, our leaders, our supervisors suck, right? We're missing the mark. So we need to make sure we're actually practicing what we preach, meaning your incentives have to be aligned. Your performance standards have to be aligned. So if these are the skills and competencies and metrics of leadership in your organization, then people need to be judged on that criteria. There needs to be ample ways to assess 360 feedback on a leader's potential and aptitude. And if they're not meeting expectations, then they need to be coached. And in some cases, they need to be either demoted or shown the door because it's a lot easier to replace a manager than it is to change the culture of a team or a full department, right? So common agility killers saying be agile, right? Be agile, be entrepreneurial, but rewarding predictability. Penalizing trials, saying we are entrepreneurial, we do push the limits, we are innovative, right? People love to use innovation as a core value now, but you're penalizing people for taking risk, for thinking outside the box. You're shooting down their ideas, or you're really laying into them if things don't go well on the first try. You're building a system where people are afraid to innovate because they know what happens if they fail on the first try. So we have to make sure that we're practicing what we preach. And then finally, your operating model flexibility. Again, this is the operating model for your team or department, as well as the other operating models that comprise your entire organization. Now, this lever matters because strategy shifts are meaningless if the resources don't follow. How often do we come out of a board meeting where leaders of an organization spell out what next year's strategic plan is going to look like, but then refuse to provide you with the resources to do your part, to make that a reality? That's impossible. So right off the bat, you're being set up to fail. Or if you're making those decisions, you're setting your team and the organization up to fail. So when we do make strategy, when we do make plans, which is good, I wish more organizations actually did that. We have to base it in reality. We have to make sure we have the right resources. Again, it goes back to project management. We have to make sure we have the resources, the budget, and the timelines that are realistic. And if they're not, if we're heavily constrained, then we need to change our strategy and our plan or bake in contingencies, right? Bake in mitigations so that we're not held to unrealistic expectations. The last piece I want to, or the last thing I want to bring up here is most organizations plan for stability. One of the things that I've always taking issue with when it comes to a long-term project plan for like a ERP implementation or a major functional transformation is the plans are built without any give, right? The timelines are the different phases are stacked one on top of the other, not allowing for scope creep or bleedage, right? Almost admitting that we're not, we're going to miss a deadline or things are going to get delayed. And when that happens, we're going to have to blow up the rest of the plan. We're going to have to reset, have a new baseline. We're going to have to bring in new people, repurpose others. It's a mess instead of saying, this is, we're probably going to have some issues. Things happen. And let's build in a cushion of resources, funding, and timelines so that we're not having to blow up the project plan and essentially start from scratch at the next phase. We can just adjust, we can absorb some shock and carry on. So that type of mentality, I think, applied to your operating model, your business plan, you'll find that it makes for a much better lived reality when you're trying to execute. All right. So enough of me yapping. I know you're all ready for me to shut up for a minute. Let's think about those four levers that we just went through. So which one, again, it can be multiple, it can be all the above. Which one do you feel like limits your ability or your organization's ability to be agile today? Is it the talent architecture? Is it the mobility and liquidity? What about operating model flexibility or alignment and permissioning? We'll go ahead and pause and let you all kind of soak it in and respond in the chat. I'm very interested to see the feedback.
Yeah, we have Robin right off the bat says talent is
Mhm.
for sure. So yeah, I'd love to hear what everybody is thinking as well for in terms of well, which I guess I wonder if that's talent architecture or talent mobility and
Probably all
liquidity.
the above, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And I don't see that all the above on here as well.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, people are saying all of it. So that's what I was going to say. I don't see the all of the above feature on here for sure.
Yeah, people want to move, but the system won't let them. Those arbitrary rules and constraints,
Yeah.
old job descriptions, old performance management systems.
Well, I just, one of my comments I'll make while we're waiting for people to chime in here is that, when I'm thinking of the word agility or lack thereof, your analysis with your analogy with Blockbuster versus Netflix is crazy because I just had family in town and
Mhm.
the whole conversation was about what are you watching on Netflix?
Yeah.
And it's so changed
Oh,
from
yeah.
how we all used to do it of going to Blockbuster and picking out your three tapes and
Yeah.
rewinding, be kind, rewind, and all of that stuff. So, yeah,
That's a 90s take right there.
it is. It is. So, showing my age there, Greg. So,
That's okay. I'm right there with you.
but yeah, so most people are saying all for sure. I would
Yeah.
say that's the system won't let them old everything. We have always done it this way. So,
And if you're feeling more comfortable with the talent, the two talent levers rather than the one than operating model and alignment, which certainly are much more business strategy focused, then that I would say is kind of a wake-up call that you and your function should certainly think about ways to work more closely with the broader leadership team. And again, don't know what your challenges are, don't know what your culture's like. I don't expect anyone to be like, "Oh, okay, well that's easy. I'll just walk into my CEO's office and say, "Hey, you got to include me in all these meetings going forward." I know it's not that simple, but we have to get creative about how we can start to get more involved and show that value because if we're not in the room, we can't help them if we're not in the room. Okay. So we're going to go through the planning cycle fairly quickly, go through a 30, 60, 90-day roadmap, and then we'll wrap things up. Now, there's more to this deck, and you'll be able to go through it at your own pace, on your own time. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But this material is yours. You can leverage it in your own organizations to review with your team, or you can leverage it to coach your leaders. Happy to help. So this has all been great, right? You've listened to me yap for the last 50 minutes or so, 45 minutes. Well, how do we actually make this a reality? How do we get the ball rolling? I'm glad you asked. First thing we have to do is assess, right? Where are we in real time? We may feel what's wrong. But unless we have the data to back it up, it's going to be very hard for us to go into a conference room or a boardroom and say, look, guys and gals, this is what's troubling us from a workforce planning um, mindset, and this is what I think we need to do to fix it. Then we have to interpret those inputs, that analysis. We do our due diligence, we analyze, we assess, but then we have to be able to provide meaningful insights and recommendations to the people that will give us the authority, the agency to actually start to make things happen. We decide what we need to tackle first. From what I'm gathering in the chat, it does not, I do not get the impression that everything's kind of hunky-dory, but maybe one or two things are out of alignment. There's probably a lot to fix. You don't want to do too much too fast. Again, project fatigue, change saturation, these things are real and they're killers. All right. Take it from somebody that spends 6 months, a year with different organizations. I'm usually not leading the only major transformation at a single moment in time. So the stakeholders I'm working with, my client counterparts, are doing their day job on top of one, two, maybe three other projects. So slow it down and make sure that even though you want to fix it all, right? And good on you. You've got to match that energy with the pace of change for everybody else. And then you act. Again, take it slow, go small, think about pilots, and then review, make adjustments, and start again. So break this into annual cycles. So each year is a new strategy, it's a new project working on how to improve your organization. So you'll have a list of things you want to tackle. Maybe you get through one or two in year one, and you want to tackle three and four in year two. But guess what? You've got new issues that come up, new problems. So it's never ending. It's not like you're going to run out of this stuff. And what are you going to do? Are they going to eliminate your job? I promise you they're not. You're never going to finish your list because they're going to keep adding more things to your list. But you got to pace yourself. So what does this mean? Step one, sense. What's changing? External and or internal factors. Interpret. That's the so what. Identify capability gaps. Translate those insights. Prioritize. Do a risk register. Then you decide, okay, now what? How do we start? Where do we start? When do we start? So make clear bets. Align your talent actions to business strategy. Again, you got to roll up your approach, your strategy to the overall organizational plan for the year's worth of business, a 3 year, 5 year strategy, whatever that may be. And then you got to do it. You got to pilot it. You got to start small and then adapt. It's iterative. So you learn from your first iteration, you make some course corrections. What do we do later? And you don't wait until the year to do it. You have points throughout the year where you're able to re-engage, reassess, make some small corrections, course corrections, and carry on. And maybe at the end of the year, you kind of evaluate, okay, big picture, what do we need to do going forward? I'm going to skip this for time, but this Project Oxygen for Google, this is a great case study. Again, take a peek at this when you get the deck, and certainly go on YouTube. There's a great video documentary about this, but essentially Google, I'll give you the high level, the too long didn't read. Google decided, how do we actually align management competencies, leadership competencies based on what we need, addressing what we're doing wrong. So a lot of the things we talked about, they did it. So let this particular case be a great template for you. Again, another analogy, GPS navigation and those old school Soviet Russia 5 year plans, right? We want to get out of this bureaucratic mindset of talent development, of workforce planning, and think of it in terms of how do we respond to the business? How do we respond to our people? We have two masters in talent development and workforce planning, right? We have our business, we have our leaders, but we also have the stakeholders themselves. Now, this is a great exercise. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is one of those things that I think would be very beneficial for you to take back to your teams and even leverage broader members of the a larger subsect of your organization. If you have a business partner ecosystem, this would be great for your HR business partners or your OD business partners to work out with their different functions, departments, or teams. If you represent senior leadership, you can certainly have a workshop where you're going through some of these exercises with senior leaders, but this is a great way for them to just start to understand why this whole concept of agile workforce planning is important and how we can bring it to reality. How can we make it happen? Okay. So your 30, 60, 90-day roadmap. Insight without action is only awareness. Awareness is great, but that's the start, right? Awareness is the fire. It's okay, now what? Action without direction is chaos. So again, it's great if you want to fix things. It's great if you want to help your leaders, your organization to overcome some of these challenges, whether they see them or not. But we have to have structure. We have to have a plan. So 30 days out, this is fact finding. This is starting to get people to understand what this agile workforce planning is all about, doing your research, assessing where you are in real time and what the organizational readiness is for moving into this new paradigm. 60 days out, we're starting to design and mobilize what our plan is going to look like. Okay, so what we've assessed, we've identified what we want to tackle for the rest of the year or for the next 6 months. What does that look like? You stress test it, and you think about what maybe a pilot program will look like. In the 90 days out, you start to implement, and depending on how successful the pilot was, you start to scale. You bring in more stakeholders. Maybe you build in some more complexity to the way this particular initiative looks. But again, you start small, you iterate, you communicate and collaborate, and you see where this lands and exactly how wide the scope can get. For each of these, so the 30, the 60 to 90, I've provided you with some tips and hints on how best to translate into action items and how best to position what you want to do with your key stakeholders. So again, the expectation isn't that you're starting from scratch, but you have a tool here, you have a job aid to ensure that you have a toolkit to get things rolling. Okay. Well, that is it. I don't want to keep people longer than the full hour. I know I kind of went pretty fast through some areas, but again, you're going to have a copy of the entire deck. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. Always happy to lend an ear.
Yeah, Gray, put up your slide right there with your contact information really quickly. So yeah, this is how to get in touch with him on LinkedIn. Thank you. And talentconnections.net will have the full YouTube link on there as well. This is his book for sure. Definitely make sure you check that out. As I said, you will get a copy of the YouTube link that you can look at that directly in these slides. If you will, Greg, go to the slide that has the activity code. So this is the SHRM recertification activity code for today. It is 26-5VZNJ. And so make sure you write that down and remember to mark your calendars for our next Wednesday webinar, which will be February the 11th. same time from 12 to 1 Eastern time. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Great. Thank you so much for the great content. I have a lot of notes here of things that I've taken that will help when I'm talking to clients. And it's interesting, you had mentioned secret sauce, and I talked with a candidate yesterday who gave that exact same verbiage. So it was funny to hear and kind of all around retention. So great points that are resonating for sure. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And everybody have a great day and stay warm.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.